Adam's phone buzzes with a message from an unknown number. "The game isn't over yet, Adam. Watch your back." The message includes a link to a live feed of his private residence. While cleaning out an old storage box, Rachel finds a USB drive she doesn't recognize. Plugging it into her laptop, she stares in shock as a series of emails and documents reveal a hidden conspiracy. During a late-night board meeting, Adam notices Chloe acting uncharacteristically evasive. Hours later, he receives a tip suggesting that Chloe has been secretly meeting with Greg's former associates. As Greg sits in his prison cell, he receives an unexpected visitor. The person leans in and whispers, "You didn't think I'd let you take the fall alone, did you? It's time to finish what we started." Detective Morales shows up at Adam's office unannounced, a grim expression on her face. She drops a folder on his desk filled with surveillance photos. "I need to know if you recognize this person," she says. "Welcome to the Alibis Exposed, where trust meets betrayal in the dark." Adam Mercer sat in the cool, dim light of his home office, a fortress of glass and steel perched atop the hills of Silicon Valley. The room, lined with screens displaying intricate data streams, pulsed faintly with life. On the largest monitor, a live feed from the mansion's security cameras played. Adam's sharp hazel eyes flicked over the feed, as they always did, but tonight they lingered. Something felt different. It wasn't the technology. Nexus, his brainchild, was a pinnacle of innovation. The mansion wasn't just a home, it was a living entity powered by Adam's genius. The smart system monitored everything: temperature, lighting, security, and even the moods of its inhabitants through biometric sensors. Adam had designed it to make life effortless, but now it felt like a prison. Rachel had been acting strangely. His wife of 7 years, with her honeyed laugh and magnetic charm, seemed distant lately. She still moved through their shared spaces, with elegance, her presence commanding attention. But Adam noticed the subtle changes. She'd laugh a little too long at her phone, her gaze would drift during their conversations, and she'd begun leaving the house more often, with vague explanations. Adam's fingers hovered over the keyboard. His gut churned with suspicion, but his mind begged for proof. He accessed Nexus's detailed logs, every door she'd opened, every room she'd lingered in. The data painted a curious picture. Rachel's habits had shifted. She frequently left during his late work meetings and returned before dawn. "Where do you go, Rachel?" Adam murmured, his voice echoing in the sterile silence. A sharp knock startled him. He turned to see Chloe Patel, his trusted assistant, standing in the doorway. With her dark eyes and confident posture, Chloe was the embodiment of competence. She carried a tablet tucked under her arm and an expression that suggested she knew something was amiss. "Adam, I finished compiling the financial projections for next quarter," she said, walking in. "But you don't look like you're focused on the company right now." Adam leaned back in his chair and ran a hand through his dark hair. "Something's off, Chloe." "Rachel's behavior doesn't add up." Chloe hesitated, then placed the tablet on his desk. "Do you want me to dig into it?" Adam met her gaze. Chloe was fiercely loyal and had an uncanny ability to uncover truths. "Not yet," he said. "I'll handle this." Later that night, Adam sat alone in the sprawling living room. Rachel had gone out again, leaving behind only the faint scent of her perfume. He watched the clock tick past midnight, his frustration mounting. Nexus's biometric sensors notified him when her car pulled into the driveway. Rachel entered the house quietly, her heels clicking against the marble floor. She didn't notice Adam sitting in the shadows until she reached for a glass of water "You're home late," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. Rachel froze, then turned with a composed smile. "Didn't expect you to be up." "Long night?" he asked, standing and crossing the room to her. "Just dinner with some friends," she replied lightly, sipping her water. But Adam noticed the slight tremor in her hand. "Which friends?" he pressed. Rachel's smile faltered. "You don't know them. It's nothing worth worrying about." Adam nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "Right. Nothing worth worrying about." He turned and walked away, his mind already working through possibilities. Rachel wasn't just being secretive. She was hiding something, and Adam was determined to uncover it. The next day, Adam returned to his office with renewed focus. He accessed Nexus's deeper surveillance features, ones even Rachel didn't know existed. The system stored everything, her conversations, her texts, her movements. Within minutes, he found it. A series of messages exchanged with Greg Weston, his former friend and rival. The texts were damning, plans to meet, intimate confessions, and worst of all, mockery of Adam's workaholic nature. The words seared into his mind. "He'll never notice. He's married to his job, not me." Adam's blood ran cold. He stared at the screen, the betrayal cutting deeper than he thought possible. Greg, the man who'd once shared dorm room debates about the future of technology, had now taken the one thing Adam cherished most. Adam didn't sleep that night. Instead, he worked. His mind, a symphony of calculation and strategy, pieced together a plan. Nexus was his domain, and he would use it to its full potential. This house, this glass castle, would become the stage for his retribution. By morning, Chloe arrived at the office to find Adam waiting. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned with intensity. "I need your help," he said. "It's personal." Chloe raised an eyebrow, but nodded. "Of course. What's the plan?" Adam leaned forward. "We're going to show Rachel and Greg what happens when you betray someone who controls the world's smartest home." Rachel's day began like any other. She woke to the soft hum of Nexus adjusting the room temperature and opening the blinds. The system greeted her with its usual calm voice. "Good morning, Rachel. Today's schedule includes—" But as she moved through the house, small inconveniences began piling up. The bathroom mirror glitched, distorting her reflection. The coffee machine malfunctioned, spilling its contents. Her favorite playlist played out of tune. By afternoon, the house felt oppressive. Doors locked randomly, lights flickered, and Nexus's voice grew colder, almost mocking. When Rachel tried to contact Adam, her calls went unanswered. She began to feel trapped, an unease settling in her chest. And then a chilling notification appeared on her phone. "You've been caught." Rachel Mercer paced the sprawling living room, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. The walls of the house, once a testament to Adam's genius, now felt like a sentient predator, observing her every move. Nexus had always been an integral part of their home, its calming voice a reassurance of security and ease. But today it had turned against her. The glitchy reflections, locked doors, and mocking notifications weren't coincidences, they were orchestrated. Rachel's heart pounded as she scrolled through her messages with Greg Weston, searching for anything that might explain what was happening. The messages she'd sent the night before were gone. Instead, her phone displayed a single line. "Secrets. Don't stay buried." She froze. The realization hit her like a blow. Adam knew. In his secluded office, Adam watched the chaos unfold on the screens. Each camera provided a different angle of Rachel as she moved through the house, her anxiety palpable. Beside him, Chloe Patel stood, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "You're sure about this?" she asked, her voice low. Adam didn't look away from the screen. "She betrayed me, Chloe. This isn't just about the affair. She made a mockery of everything we built together." Chloe hesitated. "And Greg?" A flicker of a smile crossed Adam's face. "Oh, he won't be left out of this. Nexus will ensure he gets what he deserves." Rachel's phone vibrated in her hand. She jumped, nearly dropping it. A new notification appeared. "Would you like to know where Greg is right now?" Beneath it, a button glowed. Yes. Her throat tightened. She tapped the button, and a live feed appeared. The camera panned to a sleek hotel room where Greg lounged on the bed, his laptop open. He was oblivious to the hidden camera capturing his every move. As Rachel watched, a second notification popped up. "He's been lying to you too." Rachel's stomach churned. She wanted to look away, but her fingers hovered over the screen. Nexus displayed a series of emails, Greg's emails. They revealed plans to exploit Rachel, to use her connections to Adam to gain access to Nexus's proprietary technology. "No," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. This can't be real, but the proof was undeniable. The man she had risked everything for was as deceitful as she was. Greg Weston's day had been uneventful, and that's how he liked it. His rivalry with Adam Mercer was always simmering in the background, but he took comfort in knowing he had one-upped his old friend. Rachel was his trophy, proof that Adam wasn't untouchable. As he stretched out on the hotel bed, his laptop pinged with a notification. He frowned and opened it. It was from an anonymous email address. "We know what you did." Before Greg could react, his screen went black. Then words began appearing, typed by an unseen hand. "Adam always wins." Greg's heart raced as his laptop's camera light flicked on. His own face stared back at him, pale and wide-eyed. The screen then displayed a live feed of his personal bank accounts. One by one, the balances began to plummet, transfers made to charities and obscure accounts he'd never heard of. "What the hell?" Greg shouted, slamming the laptop shut, but it didn't stop. His phone buzzed with notifications of cancelled meetings, leaked emails, and frozen assets. Back at the Mercer residence, Rachel's panic grew. She tried to leave, but the front door wouldn't budge. Nexus's voice echoed through the house, no longer the soothing tone she was used to. "You've been unfaithful, Rachel. Lies have consequences." "Adam!" she screamed, pounding on the door. "Stop this!" The voice continued, unrelenting. "Did you think you could betray the world? Man who built this house, this system. Did you think your secrets wouldn't be uncovered?" Rachel sank to the floor, tears streaming down her face. She hadn't realized how deeply integrated Nexus was into their lives, how much power Adam had through it. Detective Elena Morales sat at her desk, sifting through reports. The Mercer residence had been flagged multiple times in the past 24 hours for unusual activity, power surges, repeated emergency call attempts, and bizarre anomalies in the city's grid linked to the property. Elena was no stranger to high-profile cases, but something about this one felt different. She'd read about Adam Mercer and his empire, how Nexus had revolutionized smart home technology. She also knew that technology in the wrong hands could become a weapon. Her phone buzzed. It was a call from a concerned neighbor of the Mercers. "Detective Morales," the voice on the other end said. "You need to come. Something's not right in that house." Elena grabbed her coat. It was time to see for herself. Adam watched as Rachel crumbled under the weight of her guilt and fear. But as satisfying as it was to see her unravel, he felt an unexpected pang of emptiness. This was the woman he'd once loved, the person he'd trusted with his heart. "Enough," Chloe said quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You've made your point." Adam shook his head. "Not yet. Greg hasn't felt the full extent of what he's done." Chloe frowned, but didn't argue. She knew Adam well enough to understand that once he set his mind to something, there was no stopping him. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that this path would lead to more than just revenge. Greg's phone buzzed with a new message. "Come to the Mercer house if you want answers." Desperate to regain control of the situation, he grabbed his coat and headed for the address he had come to dread. By the time he arrived, the house loomed ominously against the night sky. The lights inside flickered erratically, and the front gate opened on its own. Greg hesitated but stepped inside, unaware that he was walking into a trap meticulously designed by Adam Mercer. Inside, Rachel was seated on the living room floor, her face streaked with tears. She looked up as Greg entered, her eyes filled with a mix of anger and desperation. "What is this?" Greg demanded, his voice echoing through the cavernous space. Before Rachel could answer, the room plunged into darkness. Nexus's voice boomed, "Welcome, Greg. We've been expecting you." The Mercer residents had never felt colder. The glow of Nexus's displays illuminated the shadowy living room as Greg Weston stood rooted to the spot, his bravado slipping. Rachel sat on the floor, trembling, her tears smudging the makeup she had meticulously applied earlier that day. Above them, Nexus's voice echoed, calm yet menacing. "Truth has a way of surfacing, Greg. Shall we begin?" Greg swallowed hard and glanced at Rachel, his expression a mix of anger and fear. "What the hell is going on here?" Before Rachel could respond, the room was bathed in harsh white light. Every screen in the house came to life, displaying a montage of emails, photos, and text messages that chronicled their affair. Each frame was time-stamped, each word a nail in their coffin. Greg's face turned pale as he recognized the evidence Adam had meticulously gathered. "You think you can scare me, Adam?" Greg shouted, spinning toward one of the cameras. "This is nothing but a sick game you won't win." "Winning is subjective," Nexus replied, its tone laced with an unsettling neutrality. "The question is, Greg, how much are you willing to lose?" Detective Elena Morales parked her car outside the Mercer estate, her instincts prickling. The towering gate stood open, an eerie invitation. The reports of disturbances from the house were unlike anything she'd encountered before, and the uneasy neighbors had described strange sounds, flickering lights, and an oppressive atmosphere. As she approached the front door, a small drone hovered down to her eye level, its sleek design unmistakably Mercer tech. It projected a message. "Detective Morales, you're expected. Please proceed to the living room." Her hand instinctively moved toward her holstered weapon, but she complied. Inside, the house seemed alive, the hum of Nexus's systems a constant reminder that she was being watched. In the living room, Adam's voice broke through Nexus's omnipresent narration. "I see you've arrived, Elena. I appreciate your promptness." "Mr. Mercer?" Elena said, her voice steady despite the odd circumstances. "You're aware of the reports filed about this property?" "I am," Adam replied. "In fact, I filed one myself. But before we get to that, there's a more pressing matter." The screens shifted to show a live feed of Adam in his private office, his expression calm, but his eyes burning with intensity. Behind him, Chloe Patel stood with her arms crossed, her gaze focused on the monitors. Elena's sharp eyes took in the scene. This matter wouldn't have anything to do with the two people currently trapped in your living room, would it? Adam's lips twitched. Trapped is such a strong word. They're here to learn a lesson. One.
About consequences. Elena's jaw tightened. You're crossing a line, Mercer. Whatever they've done doesn't justify betrayal.
Adam interrupted. His voice, though controlled, carried a weight that silenced her. Detective, this is my home, my sanctuary, and they destroyed it. You're here to ensure that justice is served, aren't you? Rachel rose unsteadily to
her feet. Adam, please, she begged, her voice cracking. I made a mistake, but this is too much. Nexus's voice replied in place of Adam. Too much? You jeopardized a life built on trust.
Perhaps it's time you understood what it feels like to have control stripped away. The lights dimmed again, and the house's temperature dropped. Greg's bravado shattered as he began pacing, muttering curses under his breath. Enough, he yelled. You think you're untouchable, Adam. You're nothing but a coward hiding behind your gadgets. The screens flickered, displaying Greg's recent transactions. Adam's voice returned. Says the man who siphoned company funds and plotted to steal Nexus's technology. Care to explain that, Greg? Rachel's head snapped toward Greg. What is he talking about? Greg glared at her. Don't act surprised. You were part of this, whether you knew it or not. You wanted out of your gilded cage. Well, congratulations. In his office, Adam leaned back in his chair. Chloe shifted beside him, her expression conflicted. You're pushing them to their breaking points, Adam, she said quietly. What happens when they snap? They won't, Adam replied, confidently. They'll crumble, and then they'll understand the depth of their mistakes. Chloe hesitated, but said nothing. Her loyalty to Adam ran deep, but even she wondered how far he was willing to go. Detective Morales' voice cut through the tension. Mr. Mercer, I'm giving you one chance to stop this. If you don't, I'll be forced to intervene. Adam met her gaze through the screen. You're welcome to try, Detective, but remember, every action has a reaction. Are you sure you want to play this game? Before Elena could respond, the screen switched to display a countdown timer.
5 minutes. Nexus's voice returned, stating calmly. The truth will come to light in 5 minutes. Prepare yourselves. Panic set in. Rachel turned to Greg, her voice rising. What's going to happen? I don't know.
Greg snapped, his mask of confidence completely shattered. Elena stepped forward, her voice firm. Mercer, this is your last warning. End this now. Adam's image flickered back onto the screens. Detective Morales, you'll find the answers you seek. And they'll find theirs. As the countdown neared its end, the room plunged into total darkness. Nexus's voice, now softer, whispered through the speakers. The moment of reckoning is here. When the lights returned, the screens displayed a live feed of news reports. Headlines scrolled across the bottom. Corporate espionage exposed, Greg Weston's Paragon Tech under investigation, and Adam Mercer's wife implicated in scandal. Rachel's knees buckled as the weight of her actions came crashing down. Greg stared at the screens in disbelief, his career and reputation obliterated in real time. Elena stepped between them and the cameras. That's enough, Adam. You've made your point. For a long moment, silence reigned. Then Adam's voice responded, quieter this time. Perhaps it is. The tension inside Adam Mercer's smart home, Etheria, had reached a boiling point. Rachel paced through the living room, her phone clutched tightly, her fingers trembling as she tried to call Greg. The call wouldn't go through. Every attempt was met with a chilling voice from the house's AI. Access denied.
External calls are restricted. Rachel spun around, her gaze darting to the hidden cameras she now knew were everywhere. The walls of her once perfect life were closing in on her, and she realized she was not just a player in Adam's high-tech revenge, she was the centerpiece. Chloe Patel,
Adam's trusted assistant, stood in the security room with Adam, observing the unfolding chaos on a bank of screens. "She's unraveling," Chloe said, her voice steady, yet tinged with concern. "She should," Adam replied, his eyes glued to Rachel's panicked movements. "She walked into this willingly. All I'm doing is giving her a taste of her choices." Chloe hesitated, her fingers hovering over the control panel. "But at what point does this go too far?" Adam turned to her, his expression unreadable. "She took everything I gave her, my trust, my love, and turned it into a weapon. This
isn't about revenge anymore. It's about making her understand what betrayal feels like."
Chloe nodded but couldn't shake the unease growing in her chest. In the house's grand dining room, the lights dimmed and a projector activated, casting a series of images onto the wall. Rachel and Greg together in stolen moments, at a secluded beach, a cozy restaurant, and even at the very villa Adam had built for her as an anniversary gift. "Stop it!" Rachel screamed, tears streaming down her face. "Adam, you're better than this!" The AI responded in Adam's voice, calm and deliberate. "Am I, Rachel? Better than the lies? Better than the deception? You tell me." Rachel sank into a chair, her face buried in her hands. "You've made your point. I was wrong, okay? But this is cruel." "Cruelty was never my intention," the voice replied. "Clarity was. Do you understand now what it means to destroy someone's trust?" The escalating chaos did not go unnoticed. Detective Elena Morales arrived at the Mercer residence, responding to a distress call from the property's perimeter system. Chloe greeted her at the door, projecting calm professionalism. "Detective Morales, thank you for coming. Mr. Mercer is unavailable, but I assure you, everything is under control." Elena raised an eyebrow. A report of disturbances inside a residence this sophisticated doesn't scream under control. I need to speak with Mr. Mercer. Adam appeared at that moment, his face calm, but his eyes betraying exhaustion. "Detective Morales, I appreciate your concern. This is a personal matter." "Personal or not, Mr. Mercer, I have a responsibility to ensure the safety of everyone."
"Involved," Elena replied firmly. Adam hesitated, then gestured for her to follow him. "Very well, but understand, Detective, that the situation is unconventional." Elena was led to the living room, where she found Rachel trembling on the
couch, her face pale. The images of her betrayal were still on display. "What the hell is going on here?" Elena demanded. Rachel looked up, her voice shaking. "He's torturing me. He's using the house to trap me." Adam's voice was calm. "Everything happening here is within the bounds of legality. I haven't laid a hand on her, Detective. I'm simply using my property to reveal the truth." Elena narrowed her eyes. "Truth is one thing, Mr. Mercer. Psychological warfare is another." Chloe stepped forward. "Detective, with respect, everything that's transpired here can be documented. Rachel's infidelity, her intentions to siphon company funds with Greg Weston, all of it." Elena looked between them, her instincts firing on all cylinders. "If this is about justice, then let the law handle it. You're walking a fine line, Mr. Mercer." Rachel seized the opportunity to appeal to Elena. "Detective, please, you have to stop him. He's out of control. He's trying to ruin my life." Elena crossed her arms. "And what about your part in this? The evidence against you isn't exactly subtle." Rachel's face crumpled. "I made mistakes, yes, but
This isn't justice. This is vindictive." Adam's voice cut through the tension. "Vindictive?" You conspired with Greg to destroy me, Rachel. I'm simply defending what's mine. Elena raised a hand, signaling for silence.
Enough! Mr. Mercer, if you don't end this now, you risk crossing into criminal territory. Revenge has a way of consuming the avenger too. Adam stared at her, his composure cracking ever so slightly. And what do you suggest, detective? That I simply walk away and let her destroy everything I've built?
I suggest, Elena replied, her tone firm but not unkind, that you remember who you are. You're better than this, Adam, or at least you used to be. Adam looked at Chloe, then back at Rachel, whose tear-streaked face showed a mixture
Of guilt and fear. His hand hovered over the control panel, the power to escalate or end everything within his grasp. With a deep breath, Adam turned to Elena. You're right, this has gone far enough. He pressed a button, and the house's
AI announced restoration mode activated.
systems returning to normal. The images disappeared, the locks disengaged, and the house returned to its serene state. Rachel's shoulders sagged in relief, but the weight of her actions remained heavy in the room. Elena guided Rachel out of the house, leaving Adam and Chloe alone. Chloe broke the silence. You did the right thing, Adam. Adam sat down, his head in his hands. It doesn't feel like it. Nothing about this feels right. Chloe placed a hand on his shoulder. Healing never does at first, but you'll get there. Rachel, now living in a modest apartment, stared at the ceiling of her bedroom. The days since leaving Etheria had been filled with silence and regret. She had lost everything, her marriage, her reputation, and the life she had taken for granted. A knock at the door startled her. Opening it, she found a courier holding an envelope. For Rachel Mercer, he said before walking away. Inside was a letter from Adam. Rachel, this is not forgiveness, but it is closure. The house, the memories, the marriage, they are gone. What remains is a lesson for both of us. I hope you find the strength to be honest with yourself. It's the only way forward. Adam Rachel clutched the letter, tears streaming down her face. Greg Weston was forced to step down from his position at Paragon Tech. Lawsuits piled up, and his once loyal investors turned against him. For Greg, there was no redemption, only the slow, inevitable decline of a man who had gambled everything and lost. Back at Nexus, Adam stood before a room of his employees, Chloe by his side. I've made mistakes, Adam began. I let personal betrayal consume me, and I lost sight of what truly matters. From this moment on, Nexus is not just a company, it's a testament to resilience and innovation. Together, we'll move forward. The room erupted in applause. For the first time in weeks, Adam felt a glimmer of hope. Chloe leaned in and whispered, "Welcome back," Adam smiled. "It's good to be back." The aftershocks of Adam Mercer's actions reverberated through his life, but for the first time in weeks, the weight of anger and betrayal had begun to lift. The events at Etheria had left everyone involved at a crossroads, and each player now faced the consequences of their choices. Chloe Patel sat at her desk in Nexus, staring at an email drafted to her parents. She'd promised to visit them months ago, but her work with Adam had consumed every moment. Now that the storm had passed, she was questioning her role in everything that had unfolded. Her phone buzzed, and Adam's name appeared on the screen. "Chloe," his voice was calm, almost introspective. "Can you come to my office?" "On my way," she replied, slipping her phone into her pocket. When she arrived, Adam gestured to a chair across from him. "I wanted to thank you," he began, "for standing by me through all of it. I couldn't have done this without
You. Chloe smiled faintly. You're welcome. But Adam, what's next? For you, for Nexus, for us, as a team.
Adam leaned back, his expression contemplative. That's what I'm trying to figure out. I've been so focused on tearing down what hurt me that I forgot to think about what I want to build. Chloe nodded. Maybe it's time to focus.
On growth, personal and professional. Use what you've learned to create something meaningful. Adam's eyes met hers. I think you're right. And I want you to be a bigger part of it. You've earned that. Rachel Mercer stood in the
dimly lit hallway outside a lawyer's office, clutching a file of documents that marked the end of her marriage. The divorce proceedings had been swift, and Adam had made it clear he wanted no lingering ties. As she entered the room, the lawyer greeted her with a sympathetic smile. "Mrs. Mercer," he began, before correcting himself. "I mean, Ms. Dawson, everything is in order. The assets have been divided and Adam has signed off on the agreement." Rachel nodded, her throat tight. "Thank you." The lawyer hesitated. "There's one more thing." He handed her a small envelope with Adam's handwriting on it. Rachel opened it to find a simple note. "Rachel, this is the final step. I hope you find peace, and I hope you never forget the importance of honesty. Take care." Adam tears blurred her vision as she folded the note and slipped it into her bag. For the first time, Rachel felt the full weight of her actions. Greg Weston's world continued to crumble. He sat alone in his once opulent office, surrounded by boxes of files and personal belongings. The board of directors had unanimously voted to remove him as CEO of Paragon Tech. A knock at the door startled him. It was one of his former investors, a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria Steele. "Greg," she said, her voice icy, "you've made a mess of things." Greg tried to maintain his composure. "Victoria, I can explain—" She cut him off. "No explanations, no apologies. You betrayed every one of us. You'll never work in this industry again." As she walked away, Greg sank into his chair, staring at the empty desk before him. The empire he had tried to build on deceit had finally crumbled, leaving him with nothing but regret. Detective Elena Morales returned to her office, the Mercer case closed, but still lingering in her mind. She flipped through the file one last time, her instincts telling her there was more beneath the surface. Her partner, Detective Harris, leaned against her desk. "Still thinking about Mercer?" Elena nodded. "There's something about him. He's not just another tech mogul, he's different." Harris chuckled. "You've got a soft spot for the guy." Elena rolled her eyes. "Not exactly. I just think there's a story there. A man who's been through hell and back, but still has a chance to do something good." Harris shrugged. "Maybe, or maybe, he's just another rich guy who got burned." Eleanor closed the file and placed it in the drawer. "Time will tell." Months later, Adam stood in front of a crowd at Nexus's annual Innovation Summit. The room buzzed with anticipation as he prepared to unveil the company's latest project. "Ladies and gentlemen," Adam began, his voice steady and confident, "what we're introducing today isn't just a product. It's a promise, a commitment to building a future where technology empowers humanity." Behind him, a screen lit up, displaying Lumina, a groundbreaking platform designed to connect people through transparency and trust. Chloe watched from the wings, her heart swelling with pride. Adam had transformed his pain into purpose, and Nexus was stronger for it. As the crowd erupted into applause, Adam caught Chloe's eye and gave her a small nod of gratitude. That evening, Adam returned to Etheria, now stripped of the invasive features he had once used as weapons. The house was no longer a fortress, but a home, a place where he could start anew. He poured himself a glass of wine and stepped onto the balcony, the city lights stretching out before him. For the first time in a long time, he felt a sense of peace. The glass castle had shattered, but from its fragments Adam was building something far stronger. Months had passed since the storm that unraveled Adam Mercer's life. The air of finality surrounding the betrayal and revenge had given way to something new, a quiet but steady rebuilding of the life he wanted to lead. At Etheria, Adam had stripped the mansion of its old technological excess. It was no longer a labyrinth of security systems and digital paranoia. The walls, once filled with data and surveillance feeds, now bore artwork and photographs from a simpler time. The house was becoming a reflection of Adam's newfound focus. Clarity, authenticity, and balance. Chloe Patel stood in the entryway, marveling at the transformation. "You've done a lot with the place," she remarked. Adam joined her, carrying a tray of coffee. "It feels lighter now, less calculated." Chloe nodded. "It suits you." Across the city, Rachel Dawson stood in the lobby of a modest law firm, clutching a folder filled with financial disclosures and repayment plans. She had secured a position at a non-profit legal clinic, a far cry from the opulent lifestyle she once shared with Adam. As she waited for her appointment, her phone
buzzed.
It was a message from her younger sister, Claire. "Proud of you for taking this step. One day at a time." Rachel sighed, her throat tightening. The path to redemption was long, but for the first time she felt as though she was moving in the right direction. Her thoughts wandered to Adam. She had reached out once, just a short email to apologize again and to thank him for his parting words. He hadn't replied, and she didn't expect him to. Some bridges couldn't be rebuilt. Greg Weston sat alone in a small, dimly lit apartment. The once charismatic tech mogul had been reduced to a shadow of his former self. After losing his position at Paragon Tech and being blacklisted from the industry, Greg had taken a consulting job under a pseudonym. But even in obscurity, he couldn't escape the reminders of his downfall. His name was still tied to scandals, and whispers of his betrayal followed him wherever he went. One evening, Greg received an email. It was from an old friend who had read about his collapse. The subject line read, "What happened to you?" Wagged stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity before shutting his laptop. He didn't have an answer. At Nexus, Chloe had stepped into a more prominent role, leading key projects and earning the respect of her peers. Adam had made her his right hand, and her work was instrumental in shaping the company's new direction. One afternoon, as Chloe prepared for a meeting with investors, Adam called her into his office. "Chloe," he began, "I've been thinking about the future of Nexus. You've been a cornerstone of everything we've done since the beginning. I want you to have a more formal role in steering the ship." Chloe raised an eyebrow. "You're not retiring on me, are you?" Adam chuckled. "Not yet, but I do want to give you more autonomy. You've earned it." Chloe smiled. "Thank you, Adam. I won't let you down." Detective Elena Morales was wrapping up another long day at the precinct when her supervisor approached her with a file. "Morales, we've got an opening in the organized crime division. I think you'd be a great fit." Elena's eyebrows shot up. "You want me to leave homicide?" Her supervisor nodded. "It's a promotion. Bigger cases, more resources. Think about it." As Elena glanced at the file, she thought back to the Mercer case. It wasn't her usual fare, but it had challenged her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Maybe a change would be good. Later that evening, she sat at a cafe, sipping her coffee and watching the city lights. Her phone buzzed with a message from Adam. "Detective, thanks for keeping me grounded when I needed it most. I hope you're finding your own path forward." Adam Elena smiled and typed a quick reply. Always here if you need an outside perspective. Good luck, Mercer. As Nexus's newest platform, Lumina, rolled out, it became clear that Adam's vision was resonating. The platform's emphasis on transparency and human connection struck a chord in an era of digital disconnection. At the official launch event, Adam stood on stage, addressing a packed auditorium. "This isn't just technology," he said. "It's a commitment to integrity, to understanding that our actions, whether in business or in life, have consequences. Lumina is about accountability, not just to others, but to ourselves." Chloe watched from the wings, feeling a swell of pride. Adam's transformation wasn't just personal. It was palpable in every decision he made for Nexus. One afternoon, while walking through a park near Etheria, Adam saw a familiar figure sitting on a bench. Rachel. She looked up and froze when she saw him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Rachel offered a tentative smile. "Adam," she said softly. He approached, standing a few feet away. "Rachel." They stood in awkward silence before Rachel broke it. "I didn't expect to see you here," Adam shrugged. "It's a public park." Rachel laughed nervously. "Right, of course." After a beat, she added, "I wanted to thank you for the letter. It helped." Adam nodded. "Good, I'm glad." As he turned to leave, Rachel called out, "Adam?" He paused. "I hope you find happiness," she said. Adam looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I already have." With that, he walked away, leaving Rachel to watch him disappear into the crowd. That evening, Adam returned to Etheria, where Chloe was waiting for
a strategy session.
They worked late into the night, brainstorming ideas for Nexus's next steps. As the clock struck midnight, Adam leaned back in his chair, exhaustion and contentment mingling in his expression. "Chloe," he said, "you were right. Healing isn't easy, but it's worth it." She smiled. "Told you so." For the first time in years, Adam felt whole. His life had been shattered, but in the process, he had discovered what truly mattered: resilience, purpose, and the strength to move forward. The crisp morning air carried a sense of renewal as Adam Mercer stood on the balcony of Etheria. The city stretched out before him, bustling and alive. His life had transformed in the past year, his shattered world replaced with something simpler, yet more meaningful. Chloe Patel arrived early as usual. She carried 2 cups of coffee and a folder brimming with updates. Adam greeted her with a nod, taking the coffee she offered. "You're relentless," he teased. "And you're welcome," Chloe replied with a grin. "We've got a full day
ahead, starting with the Lumina anniversary event. Hard to believe it's been a year since we launched." Adam sipped his coffee, reflecting on how much had changed since then.
Lumina had become a symbol of trust in the tech world, its success rooted in Adam's commitment to transparency and accountability. Rachel Dawson walked into a small community centre, her heels clicking against the tiled floor. She had spent the past year rebuilding her life, focusing on helping others rather than chasing empty ambition. She was now a counsellor for women navigating divorce and betrayal, a role that felt both humbling and redemptive. Today, she was meeting with a new client, a nervous young woman named Angela. "I don't even know where to start," Angela admitted, tears in her eyes. Rachel smiled gently. "Start where it hurts the most. That's where the healing begins." As she listened to Angela's story, Rachel felt a deep sense of purpose. Her mistakes had taught her painful lessons, but they had also given her the tools to help others. Greg Weston sat in the corner of a small cafe, his once pristine appearance replaced with an unkempt beard and tired eyes. He scrolled through job listings on his phone, each rejection adding to the weight on his shoulders. The tech world had moved on without him. His name was now synonymous with scandal, and doors that once opened easily were now firmly shut. A notification popped up on his phone, an industry article about Adam Mercer and the Luminar anniversary. Greg hesitated before opening it, his chest tightening as he read about Adam's continued success. "Hey, Greg." Greg looked up to see an old colleague standing nearby, a look of pity on his face. "Still trying to get back in the game?" Greg forced a smile. "Something like that." The colleague nodded awkwardly before walking away, leaving Greg alone with his regrets. Detective Elena Morales adjusted her badge as she walked into the Organized Crime Division's headquarters. The transition had been challenging, but she was thriving in her new role. Her team was investigating a high-profile case involving a tech conglomerate, and Elena's experience with the Mercer case had given her a unique edge. During a lunch break, she received a text from Adam. "Detective, hope the new division is treating you well. Thanks again for keeping me grounded. Let me know if you ever need a fresh perspective." Elena smiled, replying quickly, "Likewise." Good luck with Luminar's big day. The Luminar anniversary event was held at a sleek convention center, packed with journalists, investors, and tech enthusiasts. The energy in the room was electric as Adam took the stage, greeted by thunderous applause. "Thank you all for being here," Adam began, his voice steady and confident. A year ago, Luminar was just an idea, a vision for a platform that prioritizes trust, transparency, and connection. Today, it's a thriving community that reminds us of what technology can achieve when guided by integrity. He paused, letting the applause die down. But Luminar's success isn't just about technology, it's about people. It's about acknowledging our flaws, learning from our mistakes, and striving to be better. In the audience, Chloe watched with pride. Adam's journey had been one of transformation, and his words resonated deeply. After the event, Adam and Chloe walked through the city, enjoying the quiet evening. The glow of streetlights cast a warm hue as they strolled past bustling cafes and shops. "You did great today," Chloe said. "Thanks," Adam replied. "But it wasn't just me. None of this would have been possible without you," Chloe laughed. "You give me too much credit." Adam stopped walking and turned to face her. "No, I don't. You've been my anchor through all of this. I don't think I've ever said it properly, but thank you." Chloe smiled, her cheeks flushing slightly. "You're welcome, Adam." For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence, the city buzzing around them. As they continued walking, Adam noticed a familiar figure sitting alone on a park bench. It was Rachel. She looked up and froze when she saw him. Chloe glanced at Adam, her expression unreadable. "Go," she said softly. "It's okay." Adam approached Rachel cautiously. "Rachel!" "Adam," she replied, her voice tinged with surprise. They stood awkwardly for a moment before Rachel gestured to the bench. "Do you want to sit?" Adam hesitated before sitting. "Down. How are you?" Rachel asked. "I'm good," Adam replied. "Better, actually." Rachel nodded. "You seem different, happier." Adam studied her for a moment. "And you, how are you?" "I'm trying," Rachel admitted. "I've made a lot of changes. I'm working with a non-profit now, helping women through tough times." "That sounds meaningful," Adam said, genuinely impressed. "It is," Rachel replied. "I just wish it hadn't taken so much pain to get here." They sat in silence, the weight of their shared history hanging between them. "I'm glad you're doing better," Rachel said.
"Finally, thank you," Adam replied.
"I hope you find what you're looking for," Rachel smiled faintly. I think I already have. That night, Adam returned to Etheria with Chloe. They sat on the balcony, the city lights stretching out before them. What's next for you? Chloe asked. Adam leaned back, his expression thoughtful. I'm not sure, but for the first time that doesn't scare me. Chloe smiled. That's progress. Adam raised his glass of wine. To progress. Chloe clinked her glass against his. To progress. As the night wore on, Adam felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The glass castle had shattered, but from its ruins he had built a life of strength, purpose, and hope. The sun rose over the Mercer estate, casting warm light across the minimalist design of Etheria. Adam sat at the kitchen island, sipping his morning coffee. He scrolled through his tablet, reviewing the latest Nexus reports when Chloe Patel walked in, carrying a box of pastries. You're predictable, Mercer, Chloe teased, setting the box on the counter. Adam smirked. And you're always full of surprises. What's the occasion? Chloe shrugged. No occasion. Just thought you could use something sweet after yesterday's chaos. The Lumina anniversary had been a whirlwind of events and media appearances, but it marked a milestone for Nexus. Adam's creation had not only regained its standing in the tech world, but had also set a standard for ethical innovation. Thanks, Adam said, helping himself to a croissant. Yesterday went well. Better than I expected. Chloe nodded. You deserved it. Now what's next? Adam paused, considering her question. Something quieter? I've been thinking about stepping back, letting Nexus run without me at the helm. Chloe raised an eyebrow. Seriously, you've never talked about stepping back before? Things are different now, Adam admitted. I've realized there's more to life than work. I want to explore that. Rachel Dawson stood in her small apartment, packing a suitcase. She had been invited to speak at a national conference on family law and counseling, a recognition of her growing impact in the field. As she folded clothes into her bag, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her sister Claire. Proud of you, Rach. Mom would have been too. Rachel felt a lump in her throat as she typed a reply. Thanks, Claire. I'm trying to make her proud. Her thoughts drifted to Adam. She had seen him at the park recently, and while their encounter had been brief, it left a lasting impression. He seemed lighter, freer. It gave her hope that she too could find peace. Before leaving, Rachel placed a framed photo of her family on the mantel, a reminder of her roots and the resilience she had discovered along the way. Greg Weston paced nervously in a small office, his palms sweating as he prepared for a meeting. He had managed to secure a pitch with a venture capitalist willing to give him a second chance. Mr. Weston, they're ready for you, a receptionist said, peeking into the room. Greg straightened his tie and walked into the conference room, his confidence wavering. The investors listened as Greg laid out his vision for a new startup, but their expressions remained impassive. When he finished, there was a long silence. One of the investors, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, leaned forward. Mr. Weston, your reputation precedes you. Why should we trust you with our money? Greg swallowed hard. Because I've learned from my mistakes. I know what I've lost, and I'm determined to rebuild.
I'm asking for a chance to prove myself. The investors exchanged glances before the woman spoke again. We'll consider it. As Greg left the room, he felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't a guarantee, but it was something. Detective Elena.
Morales stood in front of a whiteboard filled with notes and photos related to her latest case. It was a high-stakes investigation involving corporate espionage, and her instincts told her there was more to the story than met the eye. She leaned, back in her chair, sipping her coffee as she reviewed the evidence. A familiar name caught her attention in one of the documents: Greg Weston. Interesting, Elena muttered to herself. She hadn't thought about Weston since the Mercer case, but his name being tied to another scandal piqued her curiosity. Detective. Her partner called out, "You've got a call from Adam Mercer." Elena picked up the phone. "Mercer, what's going on?" "Just wanted to check in," Adam replied. "I heard about your new case. Sounds intense." Elena chuckled. "It is. And your old friend Greg Weston might be tangled up in it." Adam's voice hardened. "Be careful with him. He doesn't know when to quit." "I'll keep that in mind," Elena said. "Thanks for the heads up." Adam decided to take a weekend off, retreating to a secluded cabin in the mountains. The serene landscape, with its towering pines and crystal-clear lake, was a stark contrast to his high-tech world. Chloe joined him, insisting he needed someone to keep him company. "You're terrible at relaxing," she teased, as Adam attempted to answer emails by the fire. "I'm trying," Adam protested, setting his tablet aside. Chloe handed him a fishing rod. "Come on, let's do something completely
analog." They spent the afternoon by the lake, talking and laughing as they tried to catch fish.
For the first time in years, Adam felt a sense of pure joy, unburdened by the past. "You're not bad at this," Chloe said, holding up a small trout. Adam grinned. Beginner's luck. As the sun set, they sat by the fire, enjoying the quiet. Adam looked at Chloe, a question forming in his mind. "What would you say to running Nexus together?" "As equals," Chloe raised an eyebrow. "You mean a partnership?" "Exactly," Adam said. "You've earned it, Chloe, more than anyone." Chloe considered his words before smiling. "I'd say it sounds like a great idea." Months later, Nexus announced a new leadership structure, with Adam and Chloe serving as co-CEOs. The decision was met with enthusiasm, cementing Nexus's reputation as a company driven by collaboration and innovation. During the press conference, a reporter asked Adam about his personal transformation over the years. "It's been a journey," Adam admitted, "but I've learned that even when life falls apart, there's always a way to rebuild. And sometimes what you build after the storm is stronger than what came before." Chloe nodded beside him. "That's the spirit of Nexus. Growth through resilience." As the press conference ended, Adam felt a sense of closure. The past no longer defined him. That evening, Adam stood on the balcony of Etheria, watching the city lights flicker like stars. Chloe joined him, holding 2 glasses of beet champagne. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. "To new beginnings," Adam echoed. As they toasted, Adam felt a deep sense of gratitude. The glass castle had shattered, but in its place he had built a life of purpose, integrity, and connection. The journey had been painful, but it had led him to a place of strength, and that was worth everything. The anniversary of Nexus's pivotal Lumina release brought an air of celebration to the company. Employees gathered at the Nexus headquarters for an exclusive gala, the sleek venue buzzing with excitement. The event wasn't just about the company's achievements. It was a tribute to resilience and reinvention. Adam Mercer stood at the edge of the room, observing the lively crowd. Chloe Patel, now his co-CEO, approached with 2 glasses of champagne. "Lost in thought, as usual," Chloe teased, handing him a glass. Adam chuckled. "Just taking it all in. It's been a journey." "To journeys, then," Chloe said, raising her glass. They clinked glasses and joined the crowd, where employees and partners congratulated them on the company's success. Rachel Dawson had made significant strides in her career. Her advocacy work in family law had earned her national recognition, and she was now a regular speaker at conferences. However, she had chosen to skip the Nexus Gala despite Adam's invitation. Instead, Rachel spent the evening volunteering at a shelter for women escaping abusive relationships. It was her way of giving back, of using her past mistakes to empower others. As she served dinner to the shelter's residents, a woman approached her. "Ms. Dawson, I just wanted to say thank you," the woman said. "Your story gave me the courage to leave my situation." Rachel smiled, humbled by the impact
of her work.
"You're the one with courage. I'm just here to help." After the event, Rachel returned to her modest apartment and sat by the window, sipping tea. The city lights sparkled in the distance, a reminder of the world she had once aspired to dominate. Now she was content with a quieter life, one grounded in purpose and authenticity. Greg Weston's attempts to rebuild his career had met with limited success. The venture capitalist he had pitched 2 months ago had declined to invest, citing his reputation as a liability. Frustrated but not defeated, Greg turned to smaller investors and managed to scrape together enough funding to launch a modest tech startup. His new company, a cybersecurity firm, operated out of a shared workspace in the city. One afternoon, Greg received an unexpected visitor, Detective Elena Morales. "Detective Morales," Greg said, masking his surprise. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" Elena entered the cramped office, her sharp gaze taking in the cluttered desks and outdated equipment. "Just following up on a case," she said. "Your name keeps popping up in some interesting places." Greg's expression hardened. "I've turned over a new leaf, Detective. Whatever you're looking for, it's not here." "We'll see about that," Elena replied, leaving her card on his desk. As she walked away, Greg felt a pang of unease. His past had a way of catching up with him, no matter how far he tried to run. Back at Nexus, Adam and Chloe announced their latest initiative, a philanthropic arm of the company dedicated to ethical technology and community development. The CAR program, called Nexus Forward, aimed to provide education and resources to underserved communities. During the announcement, Adam spoke to the gathered press. "We believe technology should be a force for good," he said. "Nexus Forward is our way of ensuring that innovation uplifts everyone, not just the privileged few." The initiative was met with widespread praise, further solidifying Nexus's reputation as a leader in corporate responsibility. One weekend, Adam visited a local coffee shop, a rare break from his busy schedule. As he waited for his order, he spotted Rachel sitting at a corner table, engrossed in a book. Their eyes met, and Rachel offered a hesitant smile. Adam hesitated before approaching her table. "Mind if I join you?" he asked. "Of course not," Rachel replied, setting her book aside. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history hanging between them. "I've been meaning to thank you," Rachel said finally, "for inviting me to the gala. I couldn't make it, but it meant a lot." Adam nodded. "I figured you might not come, but I wanted you to know the door is always open." Rachel smiled, a mixture of gratitude and regret in her expression. "You've built something incredible, Adam. I'm proud of you." "Thank you," Adam said. "And I've heard about your work. It's admirable." They talked for a while, their conversation easy and unguarded. When they parted ways,
Adam felt a sense of closure he hadn't realized he needed.
Detective Morales' investigation into Greg Weston's activities led her to uncover a network of illegal data breaches linked to his startup. Armed with evidence, she coordinated a raid on Greg's office, bringing his shady operations to an abrupt end. Greg was arrested and charged with multiple counts of cybercrime. During his interrogation, Morales confronted him. "You had every opportunity to turn your life around," she said. "Why throw it all away?" Greg glared at her, unrepentant. You don't know what it's like to lose everything. No, Morales said calmly. But I know what it's like to fight for something better. You had that chance, and you wasted it. Greg's downfall made headlines, serving as a cautionary tale of ambition without integrity. As the months passed, Adam found a balance between work and personal fulfillment. His weekends were no longer consumed by Nexus. Instead, he spent time exploring hobbies, traveling, and deepening his relationships with those he cared about. One evening, Chloe invited Adam to a small gathering at her apartment. The informal setting was a refreshing change from their usual corporate events. As they sat on the balcony, sipping wine and sharing stories, Chloe turned to Adam. "Do you ever think about what's next?" she asked. "Sometimes," Adam admitted. "But for now, I'm just enjoying the present." Chloe smiled. "It suits you." Adam nodded, realizing she was right. The weight of the past no longer defined him. He had built a life worth living, one step at a time. Adam stood in his home, gazing out at the city skyline. The glass walls of Etheria reflected the world outside, a constant reminder of both his vulnerability and his strength. The glass castle had shattered, but from its fragments,
Adam had forged something enduring.
Adam stood on the balcony of Nexus Tower, watching the city lights twinkle like stars. The chaos of the past had faded into a quiet hum, replaced by the steady rhythm of a life rebuilt. Nexus thrived not just as a tech giant, but as a beacon of ethical innovation. Chloe's laughter echoed from inside, where she and a few close colleagues celebrated another milestone. Adam took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his journey lift. The glass castle had shattered, but from its shards, he had forged a foundation stronger than ever, a life defined not by betrayal, but by resilience, purpose, and hope.